On today's episode of the Utah High School Hoops podcast, I am going to be breaking down my recent power rankings, giving a little bit of rationalization behind the why and even where I think I've missed. I'm putting this out before the games on Friday night, though, so I don't look like I was just reacting to the weekend. And then also want to introduce you really quick. I got a new ad, a new sponsor here, goruvi.com, GORUVI.com. You can type in Adam15 or Adam15 and get 15% off your first order. It's a really cool product. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Not too much, though, because you're not tuning in to listen to a commercial. You want to hear about high school hoops. Let's get to it. This is the Utah High School Hoops podcast, your source for sometimes informative, but always entertaining coverage of the Utah High School Hoops scene. With your host, Adam Peak. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Hello, happy Friday. It is January 19th. We have a loaded evening of high school basketball here in the Valley. Lots of movement is happening in region, and so just some exciting games. I think this is one of the most exciting parts of the year. It's also the hardest part of the year because you've got a bunch of high school kids, first of all, right? Y'all are teenagers, and it's tough out there to be a teenager. You're just coming off a break. You're just getting back into school, but the season is right in the middle of it. So this is like the hardest part to get up for games, to get motivated for games, especially if you're going into it thinking like, oh man, I think we're going to beat these guys. I think you start to see a lot more close games. You're going to see a lot of some potentials for upsets happening just because of the emotional and mental nature of what's going on at this particular time of year. It still feels like there's a lot of season left, but it's also a little bit towards the end. So anyway, just want to give a quick shout out to all the players out there. Keep doing your thing. As my good friend Landon Cummings says, the separation is in the preparation. So keep putting in that work. Keep doing your thing. And trust me, the confidence will happen for you. The energy will come for you when you put in the work. That's where it comes in. I actually heard a great statement today, and I promise I'm not going to get super motivational here. I'm going to try to keep this thing, probably under 15 minutes or so. But I was meeting with a friend of mine who is a performance coach. He's a counselor. This is what he told me. Maybe you've heard this before. Maybe you haven't. I hadn't heard it before. He said, if your screen time, which you can measure, is more than your gym time, which again, you can go measure, then don't talk to me about playing time. So is your screen time more than your gym time? And if so, then don't go talk to your coach about playing time. You got to be able to flip those around. And listen, I've said this already a couple times probably, but it is no mistake. This is true data that the average teenager is going to spend somewhere around 35 to 40 hours every week on a device. If your screen time is more than your gym time, you can't complain about practice time or playing time, rather. You can complain about practice time, I guess, but you can't complain about playing time. All right, there's my little pastoral nugget for you. So I'm going to get into these power rankings, which I decided to do. And if you saw them on Instagram, thanks so much for commenting and for following some of that. I don't really know what got into me, but I was just like, I'm going to make some power rankings. Now, I need you to understand something about these power rankings for me or anybody else. This is one person's highly subjective opinion about your team. And the likelihood that they have watched every game of film. I have not done that. I have 5 children. I have 1 wife. I have 1 job. I host 3 podcasts. I ain't breaking down all the film to put together these power rankings. Okay, I'm just being honest. Not watching every single game that you've played, not digging into the schedule entirely. I took a look at the RPIs. I took a look at the Max Preps rankings. I went through some of the schedules. I mean, some of the teams I kind of knew. would be at the top, Dixie and Alta and whatnot. And then I just kind of looked at the schedule and I thought, okay, this is about what I would start with from the power rankings perspective. Here's what I missed. Okay. And my biggest misses, I think, were actually in 4A. So I'm going to pull these things up. Let me see. Can I do this? I'm going to go there. And then why don't we take this thing off there? Okay. So if you're watching this, you can see I got the power rankings up here. So this is my initial take at the power rankings. So number one, I don't think anyone would complain about numbers 1 and 2. I got Dixie, and then I've got Layton Christian. They both have played hard schedules. They both have beaten a lot of teams. I think that right now they're the top 2 teams in 4A. And after that, I can tell you this. I've watched Murray play a little bit. I know Cottonwood got Chris Cox back. And then I was looking at the region up north with, you got Ridgeline, you got Logan, you got Bear River. I think is Green Canyon up in that region. I think they are. Maybe they're not. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I don't have all this stuff just locked away in my memory. Maybe next year I will. Maybe I'll be a better podcaster next year. All right. So I just took a really quick look and I went with Ridgeline based off of what I could see. So a couple mistakes that I've already made. Number one is it looks like the Logan Grizzlies have a better reason to be in the top 5 of any power rankings. They have beaten some tough teams. They have played a tough schedule, and they're not perfect, but quite frankly, neither was Ridgeline or Murray or Cottonwood or Layton Christian for that matter, right? I think they lost to Green Canyon. So I took my best stab at this one. I probably missed the most, and I already know this. We're not even a full weekend. And also, my dumb brain, I watched Cottonwood beat Murray. And so if I were to actually put these together, and I'll see what happens throughout this weekend, because maybe I'm wrong about my particular take right now, but I would probably have Logan at 3, Cottonwood at 4, and Murray at 5 is probably what should have been more accurate. And so, I put this out on Instagram as well. I've actually emailed and called the head coach up at Logan, have him come on the podcast, because I want to hear more about his team. I want to hear more about his season. I can't watch all of the high school basketball that I would like to. So that was my rationale on 4A. I'm gonna play the this quick, wonderful ad here from my newest sponsor and my friends over at Ruvi. And then when we come back, I'm going to get into 5A and 6A, because I don't think there's as many surprises in 5A and 6A based on the feedback that I've gotten. But I want to kind of walk through it a little bit just so you know what's going on. So I'm gonna introduce you to Ruvi. I'm gonna play an ad, but let me tell you how I found these wonderful folks. They did not come to me and say like, "Oh my gosh, you have almost 1,000 followers on Instagram, sir. Can we sponsor your product?" No, that's not how this worked. I found them because they have it is like a freeze-dried fruits and vegetables. So it's actual fruits and actual vegetables that you can make into a smoothie. And I loved it because I could really quickly make stuff for my kids that would be full servings of fruits and vegetables. And they have a whole bunch of science behind it. It's a Utah-based company. But you can also mix in, various things into the smoothie, either various proteins or, pre-workouts or whatever it is that you want to do. It's just fruits and vegetables. That's all it is. And I thought, this is genius. It's easy to carry with you. So when you're out, I take them with me when I'm traveling. I take them first thing in the morning. So that's how I found this company, Ruvi. I've actually been connected with them now for a little over a year. I talked to them about this podcast and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is a great audience for what we're doing." Because if you're a high performing athlete, nutrition and sleep are 2 things that you have to absolutely be paying attention to. And Ruvi makes one of them easier. And actually, when you eat well, you can also sleep well. So I want to show this quick ad from Ruvi. And then when we come back, we're going to get into the 5A and 6A power rankings. We'll be right back.
Hey, I just had to share this. My little guy's tearing into his new Ruvi box, and he goes straight for the sweet greens. I didn't see that coming. A quick mix, and the verdict? He loves it. Total mom win.
And you can also have a win by going to goruvi.com, GORUVI.com, Use code ADAM15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. That's GoRuvi, GORUVI.com, and use code ADAM15. All right, that was fun. It's Adam15. You don't have to spell it 15. So just put in Adam15 and you get 15% off. Go check it out. GoRuvi.com. Thanks so much to Mike and the team over there. They've been a huge supporter of not just what I'm doing on the podcast, but also just helping me with athletes to get properly nourished, especially during like club season, which we'll have a whole podcast, I'm sure, dedicated to some of the club teams. I've reached out to a couple of the directors. Some of these directors were like, I don't really know. Do you want me on the podcast? I'm like, what do you think? Do you think I'm Joe Rogan or something like that? I mean, some of these episodes get like 100 views. It's not like we're going to be millions of people or some important podcaster. So I'm trying to get some of the directors from the bigger club teams, and it would be awesome, I think, for some of these club teams to be able to use stuff like what they got over at Ruvi when you're out traveling to keep everyone well nourished. So that's a little about that. You'll hear that ad playing throughout the podcasts, and I really do hope you go out and check out what they're doing. All right, let's get back into this here. So next up, I've got, if you can see on the screen, if you're listening on audio, you can't see it obviously, but I've got the 5A power rankings up. And this was a little bit more, I don't want to say cut and dry, but I watched Alta play Highland, and Highland had, I think, 17 turnovers in that game. And certainly Alta plays an incredible brand of defense. It's not just saying that, oh, they were just like, here you go, Alta, you would take the ball and go score. A lot of those were in fact forced turnovers, but Highland was in that game, and it was at Alta, and it was a snowy day, and just watching the way that those two teams matched up, I thought to myself, on if you have like the degree of variance, right, when these two teams play, and I think that Orem, quite frankly, Orem, Olympus, and even Bountiful, right, that you could even put a team like Lone Peak up there. There's a variance of like, if Alta plays exceptionally well, they're probably going to win against almost any team in the state, to be quite candid, if they play their best brand of basketball. But the thing is this: very rarely do teams string together their best basketball day in, day out. Basketball is a tricky game. Fairleigh Dickinson beats Purdue. 16 seeds beat 1 seeds. 15 seeds. The 14 seeds 14 and 13 seeded teams seem to always have some sort of upset. I think the 12 beats the 5 in March Madness. And you're talking about, these are high level teams, right? And so it's going to happen here on the high school level. So there's nothing that is certain about basketball. That's why I think it's a beautiful game. But if Highland were to play an exceptional game and Alta were to play an average game, I think it would be really close. I think it would come down to the last minute, and it would be a toss-up. And there's also a world in which Alta has a bad game in a state playoff game, right? Shots aren't falling, or there's a communication breakdown, or somebody's girlfriend broke up with them. Who knows what happens in the world of basketball? It is a very mental game, and Highland plays a great game, and they end up winning by 10 or 15 points. So I think that Highland and Orem right now are probably the best equipped to take on Alta in a playoff game. And it's a single elimination tournament. This isn't the NBA where they're going to have a best of 7, which usually the more talented team or the better coach team or whatever it is, the higher seeded team tends to win out in a best of 7 or a best of 5 series. In a single elimination, though, anything can happen. That's what makes it fun. That's why I think the state tournament and March Madness are really fun. So that was kind of how I was thinking about this stuff. Orem had a really good stretch, and they had kind of a down stretch, and now they seem like they're back on having a good stretch. And so we'll see what happens with them. What I didn't do in 4A, I did in 5A, and I thought Orem and Olympus were kind of a toss up a little bit, but Orem won at Olympus. So I had to give them the nod when I was thinking about this. And then Bountiful, I'll be honest, I just got to watch Bountiful play. I think when I got to watch them play against Judge, I went and looked at their schedule. They had the loss against Box Elder, but I do think this is a team that is going to be a tough out in 5A. They play really well together. They've got two dynamic scorers in Charlie and Carson Smith, who can score from anywhere on the court, really. And so they're going to be a tough out. It seems like they've played together for a while. They've got the big kid in the middle, the football player who's going to BYU. Can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they got great guard play. They're a tough team, and they're really well coached. If you want to hear, shameless plug, I did have Coach Gus on the podcast here, so you can go listen to that interview with him and hear a little bit about his story. All right, I said I'd keep this under 15 minutes, and we're here at about 15 minutes. Let's move on to 6A, and I think 6A is the most wide open in terms of who to put at the top. I think there are probably, even beyond just this list, Bingham is playing really good basketball. Riverton has taken a little bit of a step back, but they're starting to move up. There's probably I even think I said Lone Peak in 5A. This is how bad my Utah basketball brain is. I said this at the outset. I'm not a Utah basketball historian. I'm probably mixing up 5 and 6A teams right now. It might be happening. And you know what? I'm not sorry about it. So, you're probably like, well, then why am I paying attention to the rankings? I said the power rankings that nobody asked for. All right. This is just for you guys to have something non-political to argue about. So I went Lehigh at the top. I actually debated quite a bit between Lehigh and Layton, because Layton is just figuring out ways to win. They just keep winning. And now they got David Katoa back, and he's up there running. That is just a tough team. I mean, I watched the end of the game up at Davis, and they just figure it out. And there's something to that. There's something to a battle-tested team throughout the season, regular season. I know we have preseason and region play. I just call it the regular season. Preseason is like the Great Western Classic, or there's a regular season when the games count towards your record in the RPI. That's what I'd say the regular season is. There's something about a team that just figures out ways to win. And they have just seemed to have done that. So I kind of went back and forth. I went with Lehigh because I think they have one of the most unique dynamic scorers in the league in Cooper Lewis. And you get a guy like that combined with a team that is exceptionally well coached. They all play for each other. They all play together. And I thought they're probably at the top, but I'll be completely honest and transparent. I think right now, then you throw in Corner Canyon at number 3 because they're putting it together, and they still don't have arguably the best player, or one of the best players in the entire state, in Brody Kozlowski, the USC commit. So if he comes back and he plugs, and he has a game that can plug in seamlessly, by the way, he doesn't have a game that you have to fix stuff and figure things out. He can jump right into the middle of this season, in the middle of this team. And I think obviously not just contribute right away, but not be detrimental. And that's a scary thing, because they're putting it together right now. Noah and Brighton and Durrell they're playing exceptional basketball, and they're winning games, and they're starting to climb back up. There's something about just winning games. And then with Weber and with Harriman, like I said, there's a whole group of teams that I think are going to be right there when it comes down to it. I think that with both of these teams, they can get hot. And if they get hot in a game, again, that level of variance, if Hunter and Malachi and Jordan, if they really get going, do we not think that they can beat Layton, that they can't beat Lehigh, that they couldn't beat Corner Canyon? I think they could. Now, if they don't really get going, they're capable of losing those, just like any team, right? There's no certainties here in 6A. There's far from anything certain. And then I think Harriman they've got Carlo, they've got Ike is up there doing his thing. They've also got a team that I think you just have to take seriously. This was actually the hardest one for me. I know I messed up the most on 4A. I think I did okay on 5A, and I'm probably going to be pretty wrong about 6A, but this was the hardest one for me to kind of figure out. So that's what I got. I'm going to get heading up to watch Judge. By the way, I didn't do 3A rankings because I'm just too close to it. My son plays up at Judge. Solomon King, who lives with us, he plays up at Judge. I watch all their games. I'm way too close to one team in 3A to have any sort of chance at actually breaking down the 3A rankings. And also, I have no idea. I have no clue. I have not watched any other. Judge has hardly played a 3A team. They've mostly played 5 and 6A schools. I have zero idea who is good in 3A and who is not. And so I didn't even want to take a chance at that. So 3A, I have no idea. Do yourself a favor, go subscribe to prephoops.com and check out what Hector and the crew have over there at Prep Hoops, because they break down all the rankings. They do a top 10 list. They're going to have such better information. They got player rankings over there. You want to go subscribe over at prephoops.com. You can also follow Utah Ballers on Instagram. AJ does an awesome job with that page, keeping players engaged. And I think he's got his own power rankings coming out. We just need more power rankings, right? Like, let's just get more of it out there. So everyone go have a great Friday night. Cheer for your team. Be kind and have grace on the refs. Don't yell at coaches. Just be a good citizen at the games. Appreciate you listening. Please like and share and subscribe this. It helps me out a lot. And go check out GoRuvy.com and use promo code Adam15 when you check out. Sound good?